Signs of the Southland for Monday, June 23rd. It is the end of the athletic year for the NCAA now that the College World Series, the Men's College World Series, has concluded. Gentlemen, we are back to talk about Tech's latest financial report. As always, I am Akshay Easwaran, and joining me today are Jack Purdy and Jake Grant. One news and note, the 2025 Georgia Tech Sports Hall of Fame class was announced today, including Anders Albertson, who played golf, Ollie Schneiderjans, also golf, Shaq Mason, whom you all know, for football, Jim Culpepper, who is the first women's basketball coach at Georgia Tech, Zane Evans, baseball, Montrell Person, track and field, Juan Spear, tennis, and Matt Webring, also golf. So pretty stacked class up and down here. My only note is that Shaq Mason being in a school Hall of Fame makes me feel very, very old. So that's all I have to contribute on top of that.
Too bad. I don't know. Too bad, man.
I think the Jim Culpepper thing is great and a long overdue acknowledgement. His teams are kind of uphill sledding. At first, it was a big lift to get essentially a whole nother wing of athletics up off the ground, and that wouldn't be nearly what it is without him being really the pioneer. So I think that's an awesome thing to see. Certainly overdue, and more shocked that he isn't in there already.
Yeah, that one is, let's see, where he was the first head basketball coach in 1974 to 80. So it is, I can't do math in my head, 45 years overdue, one would say.
Yeah.
So something like that. Yeah.
Close enough. All right, gentlemen, financial report. Shall we dive into it?
I mean, we
All
literally
right.
it's been 2 years since we last did this. 2 summers ago, when we last did a full proper financial episode.
Yeah, I
Did
mean,
we do one? Did we do one when we did the full big article on why Georgia Tech's
that was
finances are so
that
bad?
was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Almost three,
that
maybe close to four.
that
Like
came out.
No,
That came
three. It was
engineering
22.
engineering a program came out in 22. Our decently popular episode with Tony Altamore came out in the summer of 23, which was kind of the
yeah,
piggyback off of that. And then yeah, that was the last time we've properly done the nerdiest thing we do, which is dive into as deep into the financials as anybody on the internet does for Georgia Tech.
I mean, I was trying to unbundle 5 years of debt service tables before we got on and started recording this. So I would agree with that assessment, Jack.
Well, I think we're the only ones that aren't paid by Tech specifically for this that are doing specifically this.
That's an important, the
Yes,
important,
yes, yes,
the important qualifier.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so some level setting here. This is not. This is the most recent athletic financial report that we could find. There is a more recent one out there somewhere for fiscal year 24, but the athletics one that we could find is still backdated to June of 2023. The school has put out like I said, the school has put out their fiscal year 24 report, and has uploaded it. So some of the metrics, I'll chime in here with some of the metrics that I've found that are more updated, and some news and notes from there. But for the most part, these are all June 2023, fiscal year 2023 numbers. Jack, you had a set of the highlights here. What you got for us?
Yes, so these are kind of this document's publicly available. I'll link this in the show notes and on our website. You can read so you can read along as you want if you'd like to. I won't be referencing page numbers or anything like that, but this is where this all comes from.
Well, you're not
Uh,
going to parenthetically cite everything.
I
I'm
don't have
disappointed.
time.
That's like it. It's the
I
quality.
see.
This is the
Here
podcast
at
business of it all.
We've
here
got so much effort. We got so much effort
I,
we put in,
I
and
was gonna say here from the Rumble seat, we don't follow the Chicago Manual of Style. We follow the Atlanta manual of style, which is just trust me, bro, you know.
That's
But
it's something like that.
Source. I made it up.
Not that. That is not a thing we do. Anyways,
yeah.
some bigger highlights here. So at the time, so this is again June 30, 2023. There was still overall there was a $15.5 million loss, and that was directly cited towards back paying fired coaches, aka Josh Pastor and Jeff Collins, and that caused a big jump in their operating expenses throughout the year. That whatever the 2024 one comes out, that should not be there at all. Uh, the goal of the financial health. I want to read this directly straight from the document itself as to how they describe what long-term financial health looks like for the GCAA. They say it, quote, depends on reasonable and appropriate growth of conference distributions, ticket sales, philanthropy, and maintaining and growing the endowment base, which supports scholarships, the total person program, and facility enhancements. Keep in mind, 2023, we're in the kind of in the middle, big part of Jay Batt's run here, and that's basically what he was doing this entire time. Was a lot of these very specific avenues of finding money. They did take a loan out during COVID to cover some costs, which is fully reasonable. It happens. A big thing was ACC revenues went up 10 million from 2022 to 2023. Was that a realignment? Was that where that was that is part was part of that realignment, or was that just television?
Wouldn't have been that early.
Okay,
I
that's what I thought.
believe
That's what I thought.
that
Yeah.
it was fall 23 that it was announced because I think I was on MARTA on the way to the Louisville Georgia Tech Mercedes-Benz game, if my brain is running correct on that.
So that
But
happened. Okay,
anyways.
gotcha. All right, so that's
Yeah,
TV thing then
I
in
would
that
say
case.
that those eight, like the bump that you would see for ACC revenues would not hit until this fiscal, or
Right.
well, I guess the
Soon.
most recent fiscal year,
Yeah, soon.
which
Yeah.
is 24.
Uh, Scholarship costs technically went down actually, but that's because the Georgia Tech Foundation took on $4.3 million in athletic scholarships. So the money's coming from there instead of the Georgia Tech Athletic Association. I, I I treat them as separate entities. They are separate entities, but they work very much in concert with each other. So it's not the same pot of money, but it's a lot of the same people that are you got their fingers and everything here. Um, there's a note here about this thing called the Candler Fund, which yes refers to the Candlers from Coca-Cola. It's a quasi
Yeah.
endowment managed by the Georgia Tech Foundation that totals $54 million back when Lee Candler passed away in 1999. And so that is a pot of money that we have been pulling from for a number of years now, but it's specifically mentioned in this in this document, which I thought was pretty cool. Uh, we'll get into this line of credit thing, but a big highlight I want to note here is last time we did this, the debt number was $271 million, which was, as we talked about with Tony Altamore back then. I'll link that show too in case you want to listen to that. Was the highest debt number of any Power Five school that hadn't built a new stadium or re-engineered their stadium on a fault line recently.
Yeah.
So,
I,
which
I, I think
and
I
now-
want to call something out, Jack.
I was gonna. Well, do you want to do that before I reveal the brand new number?
Yes, I think I do because I want to
Okay.
provide a little bit of color. The 15-5 loss credited to paying previous coaches. I think some of that appears in the future long-term liabilities. So it's not necessarily that it's all the way gone. It's just, there's a couple, I think, lump sums
They can,
that will,
they're able to
yeah,
account.
that,
They're able to account for the money in certain ways. I'm
yes.
pretty sure that. Don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure the money's actually just already spent. Like I don't. I think
Yeah.
that is our. We're not actually sending more money to those two gentlemen. They've got the money.
Yeah.
We can just account it weird.
Yeah, I just didn't want people to think like, I don't know. That's such a hot button,
Fair,
like third
fair.
rail type of topic that I was like, that's probably one where we might want to flag that one just a little bit.
So there's that.
Anyways.
The new debt number is down. Thank God it's down. Is at now $263 billion, $263 billion and a half dollars to round it to a neat number. So it's down 8 million, 7.5 billion, which is in a sense good, but it's not everything. Granted, this report came out before we had a more significant jump in season tickets sales for football when the wins started coming and things like that. So I would fully expect the number to hopefully look better next time we see we see the 24 document. Nonetheless, the number that we've been worried about for years is still a big number, but it's not as big as it used to be.
So I do want to flag one thing there too, because if you look in the 2023 document, they note the 2022 numbers as well. And if I have that right, it's actually up about 2.5 million from 2022, but relative to the last time we did one of these dives, the overall number is down. Do I have that one? Do I have that one right? Because it was like 270 when we
Yeah.
talked to 271,
Yeah, it was
272 when we talked to Tony. And then since
yeah.
then it's been up and down, but I guess that's also the
Yeah. It was at 261, just about at 262 in 2022, and then yes, went up about $1.5 million over the next year. So with that large a number, it basically stayed the same over 2 years when you're talking about that many millions of dollars. And the debt service payments didn't need to increase either in that time frame based on their payment plans right now.
Two things for me on this. Number one, along with the items that this number does not include, is also the Fanning Center and the edge renovation that would not be counted as part of this. So whenever the Athletic Association updates their financial report on the Georgia Tech Finance and Planning site, that is something to look for. The second thing, and this is actually from the fiscal year 24 report, for the entire school, and it's very clearly lined out in the and like the composite units section that they do on each of their associated branches, like the Athletic Association, the Alumni Association, the GT Foundation, all those. They note, quote, the Athletic Association has a fully utilized line of credit as of June 30, 2024, end quote, which I find very interesting. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a finance person, so I don't really know entirely what that means, especially as like a massive organization, like what the implications of that are. But oh boy, it's a hefty amount of money and a hefty amount of current debt to be taking on.
Yeah, well, here's part of that. There's a sentence devoted to this in the 2023 section. Quote, in addition, a new 7-year debt in the amount of $11,125,000 was issued in fiscal year 22 in order to pay off and close a fully utilized line of credit, part of debt restructuring due to COVID-19 operating losses.
There you go.
Yeah. So basically, it was
Maybe it's as easy as that.
It was a means to recover, and that's what they had to do. So there you go.
Anything else interesting from these like past finances? The line of credit thing was the one that really stuck out to me, because if you do the diff between the 23 or the 22 and the 23 reports, or actually the 23 and the 24 reports, none of the composite units have any mention of their lines of credit. And then in 24, all of them do.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
Yeah.
But anything else that stuck out to either of you, Jack?
They do mention that football ticket revenue was down in 2023, and that's is the function of having one fewer home football game. And to put a note of how important this is, that we have as many home games as possible, and that we go to said home games, is that we took in $3 million less in football gate revenue because we had one less game. And to put that in perspective, with now I want to frame this in the clean old fashioned hate situation for this year, that the fact that we're not hosting that game, that obviously is a big red flag to the Athletic Association, and a big way to remedy potential future losses or just to get a big win is to get paid $10 million up front without playing it down. And so effectively, in terms of gate revenues, we're going to have like 9.5, 10 games worth of gate in terms of like gate pregame revenues. And that's before even a shot at hosting a playoff game or anything like that. So in terms of combining the clean old-fashioned hate and combining the Georgia games, $10 million with the rest of our gate revenues we'll have this year, we will have about as the biggest gate revenue we've seen in years this year, just purely because of that deal. So just to put in the financial context, not saying we like it or not that it's in Mercedes-Benz, just this is what this means in terms of the financials.
Yeah, and I think the accounting gets funky on that. I really do, because there's and obviously this is distilling a $300+ million in asset and and I don't know, I'm rambling. I was going to say in liabilities, but that's just how math works. Anyways, this is distilling a huge organization, even though it seems like something that's the friendly sports organization next door, into 44 pages. You get line items where they cite coach firings in the same breath and have to distill these big expense lines down into one sentence, because in the same breath I say with the Mercedes-Benz thing, they also note that it costs more money to stage a game over there too. Event production, expenses are up. So I don't know how much detail it gets for us to isolate specific trends or specific, notes other than, unless it's specifically called out with a line item. Just because, and this was something I was wondering, is this the first year that we have alcohol sales included in concessions? Because even with one fewer football game and that number being down, you see concessions are up. But then again, they cite contracts changed in 2020, 2021. Maybe they're keeping more of that revenue on top of a management fee. I don't really know. Like I'm not a forensic accountant. I'm just some guy who's
Yeah.
poured over this for a couple of hours,
Right,
like
right.
that.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I know at least around campus, around COVID is when Tech took finished their Cisco contract for the dining halls, and they just started doing the food by themselves and bringing in outside restaurants and things like that to live in
Mhm.
some of the spaces. I don't know if that applies to the football because I assume the contract with the institute as a whole does not apply to the athletic department specifically. So I don't know on that front, but that could be a thing. But yeah, the alcohol part does would absolutely matter. That's why they did it. They knew they were going to see a bump, and they saw a bump.
Yeah. And I'm not complaining.
Well, hey,
You
I'm
know,
glad. I'm glad there's some good.
ma-
I'm glad there's some
make
good.
that money, right?
Yeah.
Make that money.
My last note here, referring back to our friend Tony Altimore, if you don't follow his Twitter or I think he's on Blue Sky too. He always has these very cool charts that he posts every once in a while about the state of college athletics with the whole house deal and just academia as a whole. The cool stuff I found is that in the last 10 years, the ACC has had the highest percentage growth of the Power Four in terms of spending. The conference as a whole has gone from spending $99.5 million in 2014 to $147 million in 2024. Tech's budget in FY24 was at $128 million, which is 13th in the ACC, so 13th out of 18. But because we only have so many sports, which is 11, we're spending the fourth most per athlete in the conference at $286,000 per student, which puts us about at where Nebraska pays. That was the closest comp I could find. They have more sports. They're basically they're a full-fledged state college for that entire state, so it's not a perfect one-to-one comparison. But we are spending technically Big Ten level money uh, on per athlete.
It's also Nebraska.
It's also
Not to belabor the point. It's also
no,
Nebraska.
it's
The
Nebraska.
cost of living is half.
It's different. It's different. Every SEC school was paying at least $300,000 per student for student athlete. So just to put that into that money range. So.
I think that does give you both from an average perspective and from the scale perspective, right? Like you said, we only have 11 sports. Like Tech only has 11 sports, but is spending almost. I mean, I'm just going to round up here, $290K per student.
Sure. Yeah.
But our enemies up the street, your Alabamas, they're spending that 400K per student, and then they also field 20 odd sports. Right. So from a scale and from the per capita basis, it's just a much larger operation.
Right. I
think that gives you an idea of the gulf that you're dealing with,
exactly,
right? Competitively.
Yeah. We're not playing. We know we're not playing in that sandpit quite yet. On the field we can make some damage, but in terms of the actual guts and how many people are involved, yeah, it's still very much a much smaller operation compared to our other local rivals.
And I'm going to plug Matt Brown's Extra Points newsletter here real quick. The last couple of weeks, he's done a, just kind of request FOIA, et cetera, breakdown of how much he could ascertain of teams that make the tournament. And he did men's and women's basketball and then baseball and softball as well. Just comparing the publicly available revenues for that. And it makes it apparent, right? I'm not going to say anything that's behind a paywall. Go find out for yourself. But the things we talk about here aren't in a vacuum, right?
No,
there's certain outlays that are quite big.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So
yep.
Cool. Okay. So that is all for the past finances. We'll talk a little bit about future finances with a new athletic director, the house settlement, and all the weird ways that schools are trying to fund their house settlement payments after this short break.
Yeah, as always, this podcast is brought to you by section103.com. And dare I say, this is the biggest Section 103 news that I've ever talked about on this podcast. I sound confused, but Section 103 doesn't only make Georgia Tech apparel now, guys.
I'm
Section
I'm
103 makes
I'm
makes
booing and cheering at
LSU
the same.
apparel.
I'm booing and cheering at the
Yeah.
same time.
I'm happy for them, but I'm a little sad for us, you know? It's no, it's great to see Stephen and the gang expanding. They've got LSU on their site now as well. Of course, Georgia Tech is near and dear to our hearts, and I recommend all of that stuff. You won't catch me in purple and gold, but great national champions baseball stuff there. In addition to all the great Georgia Tech products and things that you've come to know and love. Check out of course, hats, shirts, performance wear, sweatshirts. Maybe don't buy a sweatshirt this week. Wait a couple weeks. It's supposed to be like 105, but they're great. I love everything I got from them and can't recommend them highly enough. And we wish to see them continue to expand. As always, 10% off code FTRS. Stay cool out there, and we'll get back to the future of sports business. Akshay, you're gonna have
The
a
future
Twitter
of
handle.
finance.
Sports biz Akshay, right?
That's disgusting. That makes me feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable. Becoming a college sports business finance influencer, I think, is like the final boss of influencers.
There's only
Ugh,
one of them.
ugh,
There's literally only one of them.
ugh.
I was gonna
Anyway.
say it's a small market, so anywho,
Speaking of college sports business influences, see, good segue. On Georgia Tech specifically, Georgia Tech will have a new athletic director for the 25-26 athletic year. We already talked a little bit about the $10 million payday for clean old fashioned hate going to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And then there's also this little new fangled thing called the House settlement that was recently approved and ratified, or I guess opted in by multiple schools, that will take effect on July 1st at the start of the 25-26 athletic year. So let's go through, just as a table setter, if you haven't heard of the House settlement.
wait. Hold on. I had something on the $10 million payday for clean old fashioned hate. Big changes. We're going right to the house.
Go for it.
So buried at the bottom of these financial statements, you get associated revenues, attendance, and therefore, average attendance and games at home and things like that. You can back out an average revenue per game and an average revenue per attendee for the sports in which Georgia Tech sells paid tickets. And I kind of want to dispute that 3 home games worth of revenue number because this is fiscal 23 numbers based on 5 home games and $55 million of associated revenue. That seems like a wash, depending on how that contract is structured. Is that purely additive? How do these things work? It gets to my key question, right? If we're already making about 10 million per home game, where's the needle moving, right? And I think that kind of gets to my initial point earlier, right? We saw an uptick in payouts for attending these events, but also an uptick in expenses related to traveling there. So I'm even more curious now, seeing that number. But then again, if it penciled for us to move one game where we made 4 million to Mercedes-Benz, it has to pencil. Like there's
Right.
no way there's not like 6 million additive there. I'm just very curious as to how that exactly translates.
And
right?
you'll know that, and you'll know this, but to explain the thought out, that 10 million is just upfront money. That is not day of what happens in the building of money. Like that does not count ticket revenue. That does not count whatever. If I don't know if Mercedes lets the teams get concession sales or whatever, but like our split of what happens that day in terms of how many tickets are sold, how much stuff is bought in the stadium, things like that, that will come later too. So this will be 10 million and then some after the fact. And considering it's in Mercedes, I gotta imagine it'll be pretty good when it's all said and done. So yeah, I threw 3
Okay,
games
so
in there.
this is just the guarantee. Like this is the upfront guarantee.
That was what they said. I mean, that was
agreeing to move the game.
That was the deal. Yeah, it was that we get $10 million before anything else even happens, and then Then there's more, and then that does not. It's not like they like chop from 10 of what happens that day, and then and then changes your upfront cash to where you just get a $10 million check. Like that is what they that is what Arthur Blank paid the Georgia Tech Athletic Association to take
Whoa,
the
no,
home
no, no,
game.
no. That's what Invesco QQQ is paying Mercedes-Benz Stadium Corp, who is then paying Georgia Tech. Let's be very clear about the order of operation here. What is this? What is the name for this thing again? It's Invesco QQQ, like Gridiron Challenge or
Gridiron
something.
Classic or something like that.
Gridiron
Yeah.
Classic.
I
Have we
too
talked
love
about
to
this
attend the
before?
first time a classic has ever occurred, you know?
If they're doing what they say they're gonna do, which is have the best rivalries at this stadium, and this is a tangent, but it's kind of fun. They've got our game this year. Next year, Georgia's back in it because they're moving the Georgia Florida game there, while the Jacksonville Jaguar Stadium is under construction. And so that's two of the biggest Southeastern rivalries right there. I'm like, all right, who are they gonna pull year 3? That's very curious.
Old-fashioned hate part 2.
They better not. Well, they won't. We'll have a refresh Bobby Dodd then. We won't do that then. Um,
Yeah.
I wonder how much they would. I wonder how much
They
they would pay.
might actually.
Well, I wonder how much they'd pay for like an Iron Bowl, or if Bama and Georgia, or like a Georgia Texas game or something. Who knows? Who
That's
the hell knows?
never
Georgia,
gonna
Texas, I
happen.
could see. Iron Bowl, no.
Probably not. Probably not.
Never gonna happen.
Probably not. But anyways, okay. Let's go to the House settlement.
Let's go to the House. Let's go to the House settlement. A lot of this information is brought to you by Christy Dash at the Business of College Sports blog, who had a great summary that was also recommended by Matt Brown of Extra Points. So if you haven't heard of the House settlement, this is just a massive lawsuit brought against the NCAA and the Autonomy 5/Power 5 conferences for damages, seeking damages, and then a bunch of whole new regulations about compensation for student athletes. The terms of this settlement apply to all Power 5 conferences, even the Pac-12 and all those schools, and all of the terms take effect on July 1st at the start of the new athletic year. The total there is 2.75 billion with a B in back pay damages owed to athletes from, I think it's like 2016 to 2025 over a 10-year period. And that's all funded by the schools that are in the Autonomy 5 conferences. Another term of this settlement is that revenue sharing and direct payments to athletes are now permissible moving forward. The amount of revenue that's all pooled together is 22% of what I called countable revenue of the Power 5 conferences in Notre Dame. And then everyone puts that together. And then that's all averaged together, like all those schools plus Notre Dame. That's all averaged together. And then 22% of that average is what's used as like this revenue sharing cap. That's recalculated every 3 years during the next 10-year period. That can get adjusted based on multimedia rights revenue deals that are expanded or re-signed or renegotiated. So what actually counts in that countable revenue? There's a bunch of different NCAA categories of revenue. So it's ticket sales, game guarantees, media rights, NCAA distributions. So that's NCAA tournament distributions, conference distributions. So that's non-media and non-bowl distributions, bowl game generated revenues from the conferences, royalties, licensing, ads, sponsorships, and then bowl revenue. So all of that goes into a pot. Those pots across all of those teams are averaged together, and then 22% of that average is what gets distributed to athletes. And there are 3 major ways that those things can get distributed to athletes. What you can deem as a cap hit, if you want to think of this revenue sharing amount as a salary cap, direct school to player payments or NIL payments that are from school to player. Alston Awards, there's another similar lawsuit for Alston that is at a $2.5 million cap per institution per year. And then the value of scholarships, that is also capped at $2.5 million per institution per year. It is worth noting, and this is from Christy Dash at the Business College Sports. Quote, it's also worth noting that there's a provision that specifically allows for schools or conferences to each make decisions as to whether to eliminate or reduce any payments or benefits currently provided or that may be provided in the future. For example, a school could decide to reduce Alston payments, reduce scholarships, cut sports, or etc. Another clarification here end quote. Another clarification here is from Matt Brown of Extra Points, who notes, while this is being called revenue sharing, it's not really a revenue sharing insofar as keep what you kill per program approach. All of this 22% of revenue, it's all in one big pot, and the school decides how to distribute it across all of its student athletes. And that is something that we should definitely talk about once we get into the summary, or once we get into the our thoughts section of this. But there's still more of this settlement to go, and I've already been talking for 5 minutes. The last three terms: mandatory reporting of third-party NIL deals that are over $600 in value. There are no longer any sport-specific scholarship limits. Schools are now subject to roster limits, and anyone on those rosters is eligible for a scholarship. Any of these terms, so any of the above terms that I've just described, can be folded into a full collective bargaining agreement across the affected parties if that ever happens. The timelines here. So like I said, the schools have until the 30th of June, so literally a week from now, to determine whether they're opting into the settlement manually or they're going to be forcibly opted into it, I guess. I don't really know what the cost is if they don't opt into it. The second thing to note about timelines, the settlement might be judge approved. Claudia Wilkin, I forget what circuit court she's in, but she's approved the settlement with the plaintiffs in the NCAA and the Power 5 schools, but it's not fully out of the woods. I think I already read about there's some sort of Title IX lawsuit about this. And about the way that whole pot, that 22% of revenue pot, gets distributed. There could be congressional action, executive action. There's already that college sports commission thing with Nick Saban at the head that might come together. So, like, none of this is over. Schools are planning to put this settlement into place and abide by its terms, but none of the legal stuff is over. It's going to be a long few years until we get full resolution on any of this, and we're going to keep saying, yeah, but we're going to keep saying things like what is the stuff that people said during COVID? It's like the uncertain nature of these uncertain times.
Yeah.
Unprecedented times.
These unprecedented times and an unprecedented transition, the biggest transition in college football, that sort of thing.
No.
Okay, I have talked for way too much time. I would like to go to one of you, Jake, first. Do you have any thoughts on the House settlement, how this is gonna play out? Your thoughts on how the settlement was structured, et cetera, et cetera. Please talk so my voice can rest.
So, again, I'm going to plug Matt Brown here because I don't think we do that enough on this podcast, or how much he's an influence, certainly on me, and I assume the rest of you guys as well. But I get a lot of my coverage from Extra Points, and a lot of that coverage has made me skeptical that this is a positive development for sports that we here at the Scions of the Southland podcast care a lot about. Love watching Georgia Tech football, love watching men's basketball, but I am capital C concerned about women's basketball, about baseball, about volleyball, about softball. If the vast majority of money, and it's always been a big, like football and men's basketball have driven the ship for 60, 70, 80 years, right? That's how it works, right? But I would hate for the brakes to be thrown on baseball, softball, volleyball, these developing sports that, maybe we even call them developed sports now, right? You can get college volleyball on ABC, on honest to goodness,
literally.
like television, like original three channels type of television, network television, right? Like this is these are sports that have arrived and for a long time have been underfunded, underappreciated, underpromoted. I don't see how this fixes any of that. And if anything, it almost ossifies the system in uh, an even more distinct uh, way than it already an even more formal way than it already was, right?
Yeah.
I've for all my concerns and I think I played devil's advocate when Jack and I were on last time about, just some athletic directory type stuff, right? A lot of times when I'm concerned on this podcast, it's, oh no, Georgia Tech might lose, or, like, oh no, like athletic director may not be perfect guy, or coach might do this or that. But like,
Right.
this is an existential thing, guys. Like this is I, I don't know. I don't understand, or I don't fully understand yet how we can continue to see growth in these sports that I would still say are underfunded and underappreciated for where they're at. So maybe that's me, and you can reel me back if I'm too far, but I worry a lot about that.
It's very good for it's this entire thing has always been very good for the top heavy schools, which is all the schools that already win everything. Like
Yeah.
Texas won like two extra national championships this year they weren't expected to win on top of the four they probably already had. I forgot to do my annual count of national championships. Um, it's great for those schools, and like there's that 20.5 million dollar basically salary pool that's going to exist. And lordy man, like I would want to distribute that stuff fairly, now fairly, but also somewhat equitably as well. Like there are mechanisms in here for proper financial justice that should have been in the past. Like the back payments
Yeah.
are very good. Like that is a thing that should, if we can do it, we should do it, and they're actually doing it, which is a very rare sight to see something this sizable come into effect and will actually go into it actually happen. So from that sense, I love that we're seeing some historic justice happening here, which I think is good. At the same time, thinking it from our context of like you have the schools that matter are the only ones that can be able to truly bank off of this. And we've been battling and battling to get into that position these last 5 6 years or so. It like it
Well,
fully and like on field art. I hate that this kind of boils down each school to just the football, really, for the most part. Like, yes, the other school,
but
like you
it
have other,
does.
and that's echoing your point. It's like I want our biggest sport to be the one that's doing the best at any given moment. But 4-win Georgia Tech football is just gonna be bigger than 22-win volleyball every year, just because that's just how it works, and it makes me sad.
Georgia Tech brings in $11.044 million per football game on average in fiscal year 2023. And for the average softball game, it brought in 15,000. Like
Which, yeah, it's not the
it's
same. It's
not,
not the same. It's not
yeah.
the same. Yeah.
And I think we're singing the same tune here. And
Yeah.
I hate to pull the out-of-state student card. No, that's a lie.
No,
Psych.
do
I
it. Do
love
it.
to pull the
It
out-of-state
provides
student
nuance.
card
It provides
because
nuance.
it provides nuance but between myself, my wife, frankly, a lot of mine and our friends outside of this chat are
Yep.
out-of-state students or people who paid in some form or fashion a decent amount of freight to go to Georgia Tech. I think that there's value in getting a Georgia Tech education that is just completely ignored as we've gone through this whole process, right? Of the monetary value in the immediate term and the added value that you get from having that degree that is just completely blown past. And the NCAA uses it and has used it as a crutch for years
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
excuse not compensating athletes as money and resources have flowed into this system, right? Like that should sound like I just argued against myself because I did, right? Like
Kind of. Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
these are young men who are putting, their bodies on the line, their time, their effort, their talent, right? But at the end of the day, like at some level, there I just worry that, it if you don't fund the college baseball and you don't fund the college volleyball and you don't fund the even the tennis and swimming, like like those things have to either they all matter or they don't matter, right?
Yeah.
And like why are we having minor league football played on college campuses at that point, right? Like
Yeah,
and
it's
and and
yeah.
and I think the most egregious part of this, and this will segue me out of this cul-de-sac that I so often work myself into. The the next piece on our shot sheet, to peer behind the camera a little bit, is talking about how other schools are dealing with these costs. Tennessee is adding a 10% quote talent fee and an average annual increase of 4.5% to football season tickets. That's passing it off to the fan. South Carolina, even more egregiously, is upping their student, athletic fees from $172 to add an auxiliary fee of 300. That's like tripling.
It's insane. It's
The
insane. Yeah.
mandatory fees, they're passing off these huge costs onto arguably
Students
like
to
yeah
students.
like football season tickets. Okay, maybe 10% plus 4.5%. That's a lot. That's a significant jump.
That's
But
massive.
to triple it to students who and I'm athletics is a front porch. That's how you find community. Yada
Yeah.
yada yada yada. But they are sure as heck not going to want to find community, especially at a school where you have to pay for those tickets, right? I think at Georgia Tech, relatively lucky. Like it's not crazy for
No, it
football
was
season tickets, and you
always a
don't
good
have to
deal.
pay for basketball, right? Like that,
Yeah,
it's not
always a good deal.
horrible, but to pass it off and say, okay, now you're paying another $300 off of the kids without jobs who you're forcing to do this in order to go to your institute of higher learning, like that's that's egregious
Yeah,
in my humble
that's
opinion.
crazy.
And it's from the conference that makes the most dang money off of these dang TV deals in the first place. That's crazy. Like
No, yeah.
that's it almost makes me not want to watch this kind of content. Like
Yeah,
no, like baseball and volleyball, there's still money going around and that kind of thing. But at least it feels a little more college still, right?
yeah.
I don't know.
The grand theme of the has struck me since this whole thing started years ago was just the greedy get greedier every single
Yeah.
step of this process. There has been zero indication by the Big Ten and SEC that they are looking to make a move for the betterment of the sport and college athletics as a whole. I have never seen Greg Sankey once deliver or execute a message or an action that gives out that sentiment, and that is wholly damaging to the entire sport, and has been over and over and over again. We see this in the college football playoff. We see this in so many other things. That's where that's been going.
And we experienced whatever horrible. I'm not going to think of the right word on the tip of my tongue. We uh, interacted with people who didn't see that as when we were in school as oh, this is a systemic thing. Oh, it's the institute. No, the thing, if you're not a football fan, that you see is those people get treated better than I do, and I have to subsidize that. If you're not a
Yep.
football fan, that's how it reads, right? Oh, if
Yeah.
you're at
Yep.
Clemson, oh, you're paying for their lazy river, right? Like that's
It's frustrating.
it,
It's frustrating. What
it
also
yeah.
irks me is this is putting it puts money into students' pockets who drive a lot of value. That's I mean like
Yeah.
getting what your worth is. I have no problem with that whatsoever. If you can value yourself really high and make a bunch of money off of that, like good, God bless you, like fantastic. At the same time, we've already seen this with all the transfer rules and everything. It's the pure college experience for now. Granted, this is a very small subset of students that are existing in Division 1 colleges. This does not speak to the grand body of D1 students right now, but it's completely minimizing the college experience for these kids and the ability to commit. They commit to themselves. Like we saw this with Nico I am Aleva. Like they're committing to what can you pay me, not what can I get out of this school, which is where I think Tech might have a slight advantage as this thing all plays out. Is that and Michelle Collier said this on the podcast. Eileen's mentioned this on the podcast. Is that when you come play for Tech, you're making a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision. And if we can foment that, I think there's shut up actually. I think there's a way where we might have an inside path to be like, okay, we get the people that know still that there is a added value beyond just a few $1,000,000 in your pocket, and doing this longer term could be huge. I feel like we're already seeing that with the football team now because we've got guys that could only play somewhere else and they're not because they're buying into here and not just what they can get paid. So That's
There's
where I'm at.
also a different, like, to Jake's point too. There's also an interesting, or I guess this is like part of your point. It's like there's an interesting market inefficiency here where you can, and Alex Kirshner had a bit on this on Blue Sky, but it's like think about how much money Texas Tech in NIL money Texas Tech paid for Nigeri Kennedy, who's the best softball pitcher in the country.
Yeah,
It was like a $1.5 million.
insane. It's
That's
so
nothing. Like, what is it? What does
Which
Nico Imaleva get paid? Like 8 million, right? Think
I'm
about the market for these sports. And again, as athletics as the front porch of the university, if you want to do it, if you want to continue to have athletics as the front porch of the university, but you don't want to pay quote unquote market rates for your football program, well, here are your baseball, your women's basketball, your softball, your gym, your volleyball, right?
I I hear you, but how has Moneyball worked out for Oakland since 2002? How many titles do they have?
Well.
Once everyone's doing it, no one's doing it,
Yes.
right? Like,
yeah.
Right.
so yeah, I love it. And it's shout out to one of our listeners, you know who you are, who was asking me about this literally last week. And I think it's great. Texas Tech, said, hey, we want to invest in this. We want to try and win a title. That's what they should do. But then again, at the same time, like, does having one person on your team that everyone publicly knows makes way, way, way more than everyone else make for a good culture? Does
Just
backing up
ask
the
Inter
Brinks
Miami.
truck to load up in, yeah, exactly, in the portal make for a good culture that other players who may not be getting the Brinks truck, but who may also be in the portal or in high school recruiting, like is that something that works for them? Because it sure as heck wouldn't play well with me if I was or on that team, right? So I don't
I,
know.
I think I think maybe it's not like a single player, but think about it as you can say, okay, I can get the 15 best softball players. That the roster limit is what, 25? I can get the 15 best softball players in the country for a quarter of the cost of the best quarterback room in the country.
Mhm.
Right. And I think that is I mean, market inefficiency is an overused word, and maybe I'm not using it right, but like that's the that's the possibility that's available, right? It's like, hey, like we can actually, if, like this is what we're spending on football, this is what we can spend on football. That's the ceiling that we like, our achievement ceiling, our funding ceiling. But
Yeah.
for the the residual amount that we have to spend on other sports, we can actually go and actually offer both the higher quality education for continuing, like for career purposes, and then also, hey, we can tack on a little bit more in salary and I whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Just because you have more cash available. So it's an interesting idea. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways that teams are going to go about this. I think though they're probably going to fall along the lines of what UNC put together, which falls very much so along the lines of, Jake, what you described. And this is literally from 7 hours ago, maybe 8 hours ago now, as we record this. But Bubba Cunningham put this out on the UNC website. Quote, we will fully fund and distribute $20.5 million in revenue share directly to UNC student athletes. The majority of those funds will be paid to student athletes in our two revenue generating sports, football and men's basketball, with women's basketball and baseball players receiving some revenue share as well. End quote. There's a bunch of other things about how the revenue share number will be calculated. They're also going to fully fund all of those scholarships, which they have the ability to do. That's the University of North Carolina, right? So
Yeah.
it's and Matt Brown mentioned this in response to a similar article about Alabama, but and Alabama's system of payments is going to look a lot similar to UNC's, and he said, "Hey, expect most Power Five schools to have a similar model to this, where it's football and men's basketball first, then women's basketball plus the token like other baseball tier
Yeah.
kind of sport, the baseballs, the volleyballs, the gymnastics, what have you,
Yep. Yep.
and then if there's anything left over, that's
We'll
what
see.
everyone else gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'll
Which
be
is
yeah. I'll be curious
Unfortunate, right?
if now. So there's a $600 if your NIL now NIL deals are still a part of this whole package. Like those still exist from the outside, and in terms of outside money, if they're over $600, they got to be reported to a clearinghouse that's going to be operated by the Power Four. That I think Deloitte has the keys to.
Yeah.
Um, I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of $599 NIL deals come about. And you might see the same person get multiple NIL deals from the same company for $599 that they don't got to get reported. But as
That
long as
is
they're separate
actually accounted
transactions,
for.
okay,
That
that
is
is. Oh,
actually
good.
accounted
How?
for in the terms. That
Okay.
well, if it's multiple payments that total to up to more than 600,
Okay. They got to be reported.
so
Okay.
that second edge case is accounted for.
Okay. Good.
The
Good.
first one of just being 599. I mean, like, you might as well just have do it all bag band style at this point. Like,
Right.
why even like the rules don't matter? I don't
Right.
know. Like,
Well, and
it's
what
just
else?
you're just like running around in
Yeah.
circles. Like, yes, you can pay them legally, but now if you have to report everything and
The whole
then
thing. Yeah.
everything gets published, like just pay them. I
Yeah.
don't know.
What?
It
Yeah.
all gets really squirrely and dumb.
There could see cases too where schools are able to be in lockstep enough with their NIL partners to where they will potentially be able to offset some salary payments into NIL and free up some school money to pay to other athletes. I don't know if that actually
Allocation
gonna happen.
money, baby.
You might
We
have
are
some out.
reinventing it.
I have. They're not Garber bucks anymore, buddy. Um, that might happen. No idea. But if a student's willing to play ball in that regard, that could be a way where we see some of those athletes in the non-revenue sports get more cash if the higher paying athletes are willing to accept, like, hey, I'll take that same level of cash and just it comes from a different source, therefore more school funds can go to other athletes. You may see that, I may not, but it's possible now. That is a thing that could in theory happen.
Right. It's important to note, like to your point, the only things that hit this revenue sharing cap or salary cap, for lack of a better term, is literal salary. Whether you call it for NIL or you call it a salary, if it's paid from the school to the athlete specifically, that hits the cap.
Yeah.
If it is a third party NIL deal, I think even if the school, and I'm going to double check this to make sure I quote this correctly, because this one gets a little squirrely. But I think even if the school is used as a third party marketing agent, as the intermediary, let's see, yeah, even if the school is used as an intermediary, that does not count towards the cap. Yeah, it does. Here's the full quote from Christy Dash at Business of College Sports. Any of the new payments/benefits provided to athletes under the settlement, including payments to athletes under contracts between the school and athlete for use of the athlete's name, image, and likeness, but does not include payments from third parties as a result of the school acting as a marketing agent for the athlete, or any funds from sublicensing the institution's rights under a direct contact with the athlete, end quote. That is what counts against the cap.
There you go.
So keep that in mind. NIL is just allocation money. They've done it. Everything is MLS. Just like everything is college football, everything is Major League Soccer. It's grand. It's
Amazing.
wonderful. My brain is totally not melted at all. To the point about athletic fees, and Jake, you mentioned this earlier about our experience at Tech, and just like the fact that effectively now Clemson students subsidize the lazy river in their football facility. Just to be 100% transparent and fair, Tech does charge, and there is an existing athletic fee on the books. In fall 2025, that comes out to $163 per semester for every student taking 4+ credit hours. It is waived for anyone under 4 credit hours. In fiscal year 23, it accounted for about 5% of total athletic department revenue, so about $6.3 million. I just wanted to make sure that we stated that.
I was going to say, but that's still less than South Carolina was already charging, so I don't feel bad about.
Yeah.
I think it's 300. Yeah, I think it's 300 total. I think 172 was total for the year for South Carolina, and then 300 more on top of that.
The quote from the Rock Hill Herald is, it's on top of the $172 fee that's already in place.
Right, yeah.
A USC spokesman confirmed to the state, unquote.
Yeah. I mean, right now we're still under that. So It's all this is fun.
We haven't
And
talked.
also,
Go ahead.
again, about from Matt Brown at Extra Points. I think he again similar article. I don't think this one was from South Carolina, but a similar article on an athletic department fee. He also said expect most Power Five schools to add a new athletic fee, so to account for
Mm,
house payments
yeah,
or some sort of athlete payments. So
something, something.
just keep an eye on how kind of
Well,
ridiculous the
on
economics
that
of this
note,
are getting.
we haven't actually talked how we think this will affect tech specifically, um, super directly. Like, we don't know. Are they going to actually use 25? Are they going to use the full 20.5 million dollar salary pool? We don't actually know. Not every school can do that, or probably not every school may not do that in D1. Uh, so there we'll see we'll see what that looks like next time the books come out, I guess, or whatever whoever the athletic director says, if they give a statement out like the North Carolina guy did. Uh, Granted, we have fewer people to pay technically, in terms fewer options, so it's in theory more of our people can get money, or more of our athletes can get money on a percentage basis, but still, it's like,
That's why
yeah,
you keep 18 players on the senior roster, Jack. So you can split the salary cap across all of them.
true. I need some international call-ups though. Uh, at the same time, like, where are your guts at with where this land? Because this is also going to keep changing. Like, probably in 4 months, this is going to be we'll be in a different position than we think we can be in now. But at where's y'all's guts at with this for tech specifically?
It certainly doesn't help that Tech has to find a new athletic director while all of this is in
Yeah.
motion. Obviously, I think Jack, we've discussed like there's probably been some planning that's happened, especially because like everyone kind of knew what the settlement was going to be. It was just, oh, we're gonna like dot some T's and cross some I's before Judge Wilkin approves it. Um, so there's some advanced planning and probably contracts that have been signed and all this stuff. Like, but at the end of the day, it's like probably not great that you're not hearing from the tip of the spear exactly what the plan is going to be. Much like Bubba coming in put out for UNC. I would probably err on the side of, hey, like if no one else in the SEC is going to play their volleyball players, let's bring them here. I
I
think
would love that.
that like investing in programs like that, um, investing in the non-revenue sports programs is my interest on this one.
Which we know this stated like they're gonna but make O'Keefe a better building eventually as part of the new development plan, things like that and stuff like that. So like they've got that coming. Stuff like that is coming down the pipeline, which is great. Um, yeah, I'll be. I'm just. I wish we could. Yeah, I wish there were specifics here that we could go with, but nonetheless, I think we'll get a man.
I'm gonna
Man,
kind
I
of
don't know.
assume that we're gonna hear from John Palumbo, the interim athletic director, on July 1st. Like
Yeah, I
what
think
the
yeah,
what the plan is.
yeah, because at the say. Oh, I forgot to mention this earlier. Schools are having to basically make two financial plans for 2025, 2026 because it's like, okay, what does their
So are a
money
lot of companies, man.
right. I mean, so
Uh,
what does what do the books look like if house is fully happening? What does it look like if house is partially happening? What does it look like if it got shut down? I mean, granted, this thing basically got approved, so like they've moved on,
Well,
but
got approved, but again, like we were
there's
saying earlier, like there are so many lawsuits left in this one. It could be 10 years,
it's a
5 or 10 years, right before it's actually set in stone.
yeah. No, this is a very for athletic departments. This is a very rough time to be operating one right now in general with with just how much more movement there is with the players, with what to do there in terms of the transfer portal and how they're approaching athletic departments too, just because there's a money angle to this now that wasn't there 6 7 years ago, maybe eight, I don't know at this point. uh, and yeah, this case, like, it's a very the stories and things that we'll hear from people that were in athletic departments right now and how their lives changed in terms of their day-to-day life with this particular year is gonna be very interesting to see. And I know, at least at Tech, I know it hasn't been easy. Like, you lose your athletic director, that's quite something too. Like, doesn't make anything any easier. But it's a very slow and rough adjustment period. All while you're still like trying to win championships. Like, there's a lot. It's the amount of off-field stuff that is still affecting on-field stuff it's a lot.
I mean, these GM roles, I think we've already seen them become very popular. You're going to
Yes,
continue to see
yes,
them become
yeah,
popular.
yeah.
And just someone to take all of that roster management out of a head coach's hands. And I imagine not just at the football level, right, and the men's basketball level, but especially if you have schools like Texas Tech that are investing in their softball programs, or they're like whoever is getting a slice of the pie will have someone to manage that pie more directly.
Yeah, yeah. Well, once we hear from either Palumbo or whoever is the new AD, that will be a very significant guidepost for how we also I probably evaluate tech success too, because we will know. I mean, we already know where they put a lot of resources and money. Like that hasn't been a secret. But now it'd be like, okay, now we know who's part in particular that plays for the Yellow Jackets and in all sports is getting the biggest share of this money pool. And you kind of treat it like you do in any other pro sport. You're just like, okay, is your $500 million guy in baseball playing to that level? Like, obviously, not as much money here, but
Yes, we get to do wins above replacement
it,
in and salary cap projections for
it'll
college athletics. Oh
basically,
boy,
basically. Um,
it's great. It's great. This is
oh, and remember, the more you play as Georgia Tech in NCAA 26, the more money Georgia Tech gets from EA, because it's based off of how many people play as your team. So you have an excuse to play a lot of NCAA 26 because it literally will give us more money to pay Haynes King and whoever else we need to pay.
I mean, college athletics is
Isn't
so
Haynes
weird now.
graduating?
I mean, yeah, but like, greedy. Yeah, it's how we pay Aaron Philo. There you go. Pay Aaron Philo next year.
Fascinating. Truly, truly fascinating. I think that's about it on the House settlement on Georgia Tech's finances, past and present and future. Gentlemen, anything else that we need to talk about today?
Volleyball schedule should be coming out somewhat soon. You can kind of schedule creep based on other schools that have released it. I know we play Pitt at the end of the season again because, of course, we do.
Purdue.
Yeah, we play Purdue.
Purdue.
Yep. The women's basketball team I think is going to like the Cayman Islands or something for
Yeah.
something. The men's team is
That's-
going to Destin for like to play Duquesne, I think. Or something like that.
Destined to Duquesne. I don't know.
Something like that. So
We'll
there's some
get
games
there.
popping up there, but a lot of those won't matter for a little bit. So I mean, the next big plot point is athletic director, and then finding out who is on this volleyball team that has basically had gone through a very massive roster shakeup.
Yeah.
All will be revealed, except like a month from now, and not like tomorrow. It's a very bad, very anticlimactic cliffhanger, but we'll get through it. It's a long summer, but it's also a short summer. Like we'll be previewing football before you know it. Honestly, it's
Yeah.
crazy. The summer, it always moves by. It moves by so slow and also so quickly. It's crazy. I think that's about it, gentlemen. Jack or Jake, you want to take us out?
Sure. As always, you can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. Email us more summer topics from therumbleseat@gmail.com. You can find us on Blue Sky. FTRS is over there. So are Jack and I, and also Akshay. You can find Section 103 on Instagram at Section 103 and Section 103. Tell your LSU friends, but tell your LSU friends that we sent them code FTRS for 10% off. Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat is where you can find us. And then podcasts wherever fine podcasts are distributed. Until we talk again, good night, good luck, and go Jackets.